Evening all. Princeanaelbey, Divine Prince of the Divine Theocracy of the Moorish Science Temple of America through Temple Alhambra. I was thinking about taking my email down, but I appear to be getting messages through it, so I'll just leave it up. This, and apparently, YouTube is all over the world. I've got an email from an Australian, and I'll give you his first name. His first name is Daryl. And Daryl asks, well, first he states, I think I know you. Weren't you OSI in the United States Air Force? Then he asks, didn't your OSI squad come with some CIA guys gathering intelligence in Long Tan in the early 1970s? I was with the 1st Field Regiment, Royal Australian Artillery. 1st Field Regiment. Are you sure, Daryl? And in answer to your question, I was Air Force. I was OSI, Joint Military Covert Operations. And in answer to your question, was I at Long Tan with CIA operatives? My answer is, I have no knowledge of such an operation. And if such an operation did indeed take place, I am not predisposed to divulge the details of that alleged operation. That is the best I can do for you, Daryl. For some reason, the television networks, and what I need is for you amalgamated Moors, and you Moors, and even you Moriscos, I need for you to turn off your television sets. It is killing you. Your television sets are killing you. Your television sets are killing you by killing your mind. You do realize there is absolutely nothing on that thing worthy of your time. Case in point, this I just discovered recently. On that network, Black Entertainment television, there is a show. And that show is called, American Gangster or something? Trap Queens. Trap Queens? Really? Trap Queens? Now, I'm almost sure that this show is about a bunch of sisters who are going about and out of their way to ensure that the younger sisters coming up under them do not fall into the trap of single motherhood, how to make correct choices, and how not to bow down to peer pressure. Now, I'm almost sure that that's what this show is about. Trap Queens. Showing the young princesses how not to fall into the trap. And this trap definitely leads to stereotypes. Now, I'm sure that's what this show is about, because it's called Trap Queens. And it is on BET, the television network that certainly does have the best interest of the American Asiatics' interest at heart. It has to. It has to, because it has a following. It has a following. you black people and you African Americans who do not know that your bloodline is Hebrew, Moabite, Canaanite. You don't know you are more. And I'm sure it's okay for you right now. But how long are you going to stand for this kind of foolishness? And it is being driven right into the skulls of your children. Maybe even you. Maybe even you. Perhaps you're not mature enough to turn away from garbage that has absolutely no redeeming value and is definite, and the actions and the images on there, not only are they not socially acceptable, but they'll make it that way as long as they continue to show it to you. You will think it is normal behavior. Because after all, BET does have the Asiatic's best interest at heart. So it wouldn't dare produce any programs that would denigrate you further so that you may emulate thinking that it's real life. BET wouldn't do that, would it? It does still have an opportunity, to demonstrate to you that it actually may have your best interest at heart, but not by its current programming. You see, there are things in this land that there just isn't any more use for. I'm going to give you some of these institutions. One is BET. It serves no useful purpose. The other is the NAACP, because they apparently still haven't made up their mind if they're black people or colored people. Since people are no longer colored, it really needs to go away because they're race hustlers. They're race hustlers. They're not even trying to understand anything that is relevant to the advancement of Americans in the 21st century. They just are not. What they are interested in, because they've got jobs and they get a paycheck for keeping the race hustling going. That's what they do. There is no more need for an NAACP, because I ain't no colored person. Colored means anything that has been painted, stained, varnished, or dyed. I have been neither of those things. Have you? If not, you're not a colored person either. Not a colored person either. But I'm going to show you just how far this nonsense has gone. Believe it or not, this nonsense about names, it has just gone on far enough. It has even permeated the Moorish Science Temple of America. Let me explain to you how. I mean, the colored people, they don't know what name they want to go by. This week they're African American. And where this confusion over name is concerned, yes, it has even spilled over into the Prophet's now defunct organization. Because you see, you have people out here who are calling themselves Alhambra. Alhambra? Really? Alhambra. You're an Alhambra. Now, what you're telling me by telling me that that's your name? You are an Albey? What you're telling me is no grand sheik conferred your appellation upon you. That's the first thing you're telling me. The second thing you're telling me is you made up your name all by yourself because you didn't want to join the temple. Well, in that regard, I can't blame you there. However, if for no other reason, you should have gone in and connected yourself back with your family. If for no other reason than that. Because you're Albey, you think that stealing someone else's name makes you more than the next more? There are no Albeys. So just stop it. Just stop it. You see, that nonsense permeated the Moorish Science Temple of America. Calling yourself Albey does not make you more than the next Moor. So just stop it. Because the question becomes, what's in a name? Everything is in a name. And when you take someone else's name, you steal from them. You are not Albey. You are one or the other, but you are not both. You're a fraud. And you need to straighten yourself out. You are not Albey. You can't be. That is as lunatic as that nonsense that the snakes and vipers who tore down the Prophet's temple in the 1920s, that is as ludicrous, being Albey, as Givens declaring himself the Prophet reincarnated. Now, I am compelled to share this with you. I began my scholarship at 8 years old at the feet of my masters, Misbehaving and Princeanaelbey. They were with the Prophet. They were in the Prophet's Young Men's International Business League, along with Robert Poole, who later went on to change his name to become the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Yes, he started out in the Moorish Science Temple of America. But now back to Givens and his nonsense. There are Moors to this very day who refer to Givens as the Prophet reincarnated. Well, I'm going to give you why Givens was never the Prophet reincarnated. In basic Moorish science teachings, after you learn that you've always been here, then you learn that two souls cannot occupy the same body at the same time. Now, Givens was the Prophet's chauffeur. And considering that reincarnation occurs on a generational basis, because he drove the Prophet around did not make him the Prophet. And he is in violation of universal law, talking about he was the Prophet reincarnated. He was no such thing. Two spirits, two souls cannot occupy the same body at the same time. That flies straight in the face of elemental physics. It cannot happen. It cannot happen. So there are things that just cannot go on in the Moorish Science Temple of America. And those two nonsensical things are two things among them. Oh, there are more. But those are just two of them. And those of you Moors who have built your temples around the reincarnated Prophet, your scholarship is lacking. Your scholarship is lacking. There is no such thing. perhaps 30 years after the prophet was gone and Givensville was born, perhaps the spirit of the prophet, touched that infant in utero. But that's pretty much about as close as you're going to come to a reincarnated prophet. A man who is alive and has his own soul and his own spirit cannot possibly share that one vessel with another soul and another spirit. Whose feet were you all sitting at where you did not know this? Whose feet were you sitting at? Because they taught you wrong. That's elemental Moorish science. And conventional science, the laws of physics. It cannot happen. It would not happen any more than anybody can be Albey. It cannot happen. And there was no prophet reincarnated. So you all just need to stop that, because you are perpetuating a lie and you are misleading people. You are not, especially you sheiks, you so-called sheiks, you know you're in violation of Act 6. If you're teaching people about a reincarnated prophet who was on the scene at the same time the prophet was on the scene, you are out of order. You are out of order. Why are you teaching that nonsense? Because you don't know science. That's why. Because you don't know science. And when you don't know science, you have nothing to teach your congregation. Nothing. But whatever you do, for the sake of Allah, stop teaching them that Givensville was the prophet reincarnated. He was not. He said he was. And those weak-minded people in that temple who followed him and called him the reincarnated prophet. If Givensville was the prophet reincarnated, why didn't he, as he was prone to do? Why didn't Givensville bring back hard copy proof that the prophet was the landlord here in Greater Mauritania? Why didn't Givensville show that to the Moors back then? I mean, he was the prophet reincarnated. He certainly knew where the documents were. I found them. Givensville certainly would have known where those documents were. And everybody's running around here talking about the trust. Trust this. There's nothing for you. Nothing. That you can trust. While you're wasting your time looking for the prophet's trust. No. So the nonsense truly must cease. It must cease. Because Drew Ali, I'm sure he could never have envisioned such buffoonery and chicanery all the days he lived. He would never have envisioned this of his organization. Never. Temples in the South. Givensville, the reincarnated prophet. Do you think for a moment he would have stood by and okayed any of this nonsense? Do you really? But you all are doing it, aren't you? You all are doing it. So you all just keep trampling on that mess you made of the prophet's temple, because there's nothing there now. There's nothing there now. Built a new foundation, and all you're doing is playing and kicking rocks around on the old one that you tore down. because you're not allowed over here the way you are. You can't come over here. And on January 8th, when the doors of the temple close, the doors won't open again until 2023. 2023 is when the doors of the temple will be open again for membership. Until then, you've got 3 years to prove that you are worthy enough to come in to Temple Alhambra and the Moorish Science Temple of America. And you will be tapped according to your words, works, and deeds. And for you venom-spewing Moors out there, and I know there are a lot of you. Perhaps you need to get back in that Circle 7 and read The Inconstancy of Man. You need to read that. And perhaps you'll swallow that venom because you haven't done anything. And let me share this with you too, you Asiatics. Some of you live in a negrocracy, that is where you live like a Negro, and others of you live in a nigocracy, and that's where you live like a nigger. Hateful, yet you call yourself Moor. Spiteful, yet you call yourself Moor. Treacherous, yet you call yourself Moor. None of these things is a good reflection on Drew Ali or what he brought for thee. None of them. You Albeys are slapping him in the face after he told you to use either L or Bay. But I guess you say, well, forget it, he ain't here. I'll just pick out some names and use whatever I want. You do that, you will not be recognized at Temple Alhambra. You will not be recognized by the Moorish Science Temple of America. You just won't. Because you're in violation. And whatever you have to say about this, you need to keep it. Keep it to yourself. Because it will change nothing. You still will not have done anything. You still will not have said anything that is or has changed the way anybody lives, especially for the uplifting of those same somebodies you didn't do anything for. So, this you Moors need to think about. You need to think about it. You also need to read the chapter on master and servant. You kind of really need to do that. And I'm sure that because you were never properly taught how to read the Circle 7, all you're going to do is run your eyes over words you are familiar with. There will be not one whit of comprehension. Not one whit of comprehension. Just words you're familiar with. And you think that's reading. Well, down in the description here, I put the number to and the times when we meet at Alhambra. When you come with your questions. You come with your questions. But understand this. I will brook no foolishness. I do not entertain foolishness in that temple. and I do not tolerate buffoonery. And the one thing I definitely do not tolerate is a know-it-all. Because I'm going to share this with you Moors too. The one thing that the wise man does know is that he knows nothing. That is the first thing the wise man knows. He knows nothing. And if you come here, if you join us on that line, you come in humility. You come in humility, because being humble is the way to go. Being humble is the way to go. So, I just had to get this off my chest today because it's a bothersome thing. It's a bothersome thing. And when you are trying, check that. When you are building a legacy for the next 7 generations, that is all that matters. The thoughts, opinions, and everything else from those who are doing nothing matter not. They matter not. However, if you Moors wish to help Temple Alhambra, the email address is in the description. And as always, be peaceful, and we shall meet again. Oh, don't forget to like and share. I almost forgot. Peace.